total of 24 wig stands donated. They didn't have room on the table for more than, I think, 18. The rest out of the site here.
Angelo, I'm going to show you first Angelo's old shop, and then and then his new shop. So I can get this to work. This is Angelo's old shop. I'm afraid I can't make it any bigger than that over in the corner of the screen. I'll try. Yeah, there it is. And as you can see, it's very crowded with lots of stuff in there. And it's a tiny garden shed out back of his house. That's the tiny shop. And then we've got a video he sent me today of his new shop. Same shop, just rearranged. So I got to just hang on a second here. Learning how to do this. Here's the other one.
Oh, here's the new and improved tiny shop. Has a new deck out front. Going is the ramp for the lawnmower with the shingles for abrasives. And let's see, we put shelves up off the floor. They're all wall hung. I tried to get everything off the floor possible. The compressor can go up on the loft eventually. Here's the Laguna 1218. Notice it's got a one-way banjo, which is a better fit. The intent is to bring the 1224 one-way up here. So I reinforced the floor. It's still a bit wobbly. So I'll need to put another 4x4 underneath the floor. Maybe even put another layer of 3/4 inch plywood when I can afford to buy plywood. There's the grinding station, which needs to be rebuilt because it's a little wobbly. And the most important improvement there, you see, I put an electricity into the shed. There's the sub panel, and now I can run the lathe, the grinder, the heater, and the air conditioner. So it's a good 4-season space for me. If you know the big space where the big lathe is, it's only a 2-season space. So there it is, new and improved. Angelo's tiny shop.
And Barry will faddle the camera to get it right on.
All right, I brought a couple things. I had these pictures of the dolls on the back of the AW magazine. This is, I don't know, about 13-inch by 5-inch cherry. I've got a good many of them. Some of them have cracks in them, so I put the little, I use Purple Heart to make the little butterflies. And I'll put them in and turn them. I've turned some of them actually where they come out on the inside, but this one didn't. But, and I left a little bit of the sapwood on it to kind of give it a little bit of a different character.
How'd you set them in there? You route them?
Yeah, I have a router with a guide bushing and then an 1/8-inch router bit. Bought the kit from the MLCS down in Philadelphia. Forget what I paid, around $30. If you see them on Rock or some of the other places, they want $69 for them. I go for $30.
Does the kit come with multiple patterns, Ron, or just the butterfly pattern?
There's no pattern with it. You buy them separate. What I bought was the guide bushing and the router bit for the router from MLCS. The pattern, the butterfly patterns are plastic patterns. I bought those from Rockler probably 15 years ago. I used the bigger ones, about 3-inch butterflies on a tabletop that I had done, a 3-inch thick slab that I did, walnut slab. So I bought the patterns for that, and there's 3 or 4 different sizes of of patterns. They're clear plexiglass patterns that have these in, and
Right.
there's actually one smaller than this in that pattern.
Eric, back out to get his face if you can.
This is about an inch long, inch and a quarter long. And there's one that's smaller than this yet. And then I don't know how many dozen different sizes that you can make for bigger pieces. I use them, like I said, on tabletop.
Is it a problem doing that?
How do you?
John.
Well,
Just a
before
sec,
that-
John.
Go ahead, Ben.
How do you do the curve? Grouting on the curve.
I think that's what you're asking, Ben. How do you do that? Well,
No, how do you keep them? How do you fasten them?
well, you've got the plastic pattern is about probably 4 inches wide, 6 inches long, and 1/4 inch thick. So I lay that on there, and with hot melt, and I'll use some wedges, little blocks of wood underneath to wedge it and hot melt it. And you get it down as close to on your crack where you want it, and then just wedge it underneath, put wedges underneath where you need it.
Yeah.
And then you just run your router across the pattern. But it's a little tricky to do that. And of course, I make my own butterflies. I can't think of his name. The guy from Hawaii was showing doing a lot of them.
Emiliano.
Yeah, and he was actually, there was a business that he was selling the butterflies through them. People are buying them, and then they had the pattern to make the cavity to put them in. But I make my own butterflies and then do the cavity. That's what the router bit kit does for you. It gives you the guide that follows the pattern, and then there's a little washer that goes on there that steps the bit in, so that then you can make the butterfly. So you can make both with the one set of router bushings. So that's handy for that kind of thing. So I've done a number of them like that. But I saw these and I sort of like this doll, and so I've done a couple of them. I have a granddaughter up in Connecticut, so I'm gonna send this up to her. Try to keep it in the camera here. What I liked about it is they're really simple to make, but the thing that I like is the different hats that they had on. And I think the hat makes the doll, the different shapes of hats, the different types of hats. Well, I've got a couple of grandsons down in Texas. So the next thing I'm gonna make a 10-gallon hat. I got Bob Dockenhauer over there at our place where we live. He's made a bunch of, he made a full size one that he wears, but he's made some small ones like this. So I've got to get him to help me make a hat. I want to make a Western hat for the kids down in Texas. But one of the things that I did on these that I thought was kind of tricky and unique, you'll set these in the lathe and basically round off your block. And then to turn the offset, you just grip it in the chuck at an angle and grab it in the jaws. Well, I brought the tailstock up and turned all that. Well, then the first one I did, well, then the bottom's all chewed up. I didn't have it finished or what have you. So what I did was I drilled a hole in the bottom with an inch Forstner bit, so that I can put that into my spigot jaws and hold it on the inside, so that I can round off the end, hold the end with the tailstock until I'm all done with the head and everything, and then I can cut off the nub at the end that the tailstock is in. That way, then I can also finish the bottom, get a nice base that looks a lot neater. So they're kind of fun to do, simple to do. It only takes a few minutes to make one. I don't have a lot of artistic ability as far as the coloring goes, but I don't have any finish on this yet. I'm gonna put some spray lacquer on it probably, but I might want to do a little more coloring in some of the plain colors here. So anyway, that's what I've been working on.
Very cool. Mike Junker has his hand up.
Yeah, a couple quick questions. Did Ron tape off when he painted those? That doll that he has there? I was just curious about the detail. He's saying he's not artistic, but it looked really great from this side.
What do you say, Ron? Did you tape off the paint?
No, this is all freehand. I painted the yellow and then put the green border onto it. And if you look at it, you can see that it's freehanded. But no, I didn't tape it off.
Well, it looks good. Looks great.
And yeah, it's not bad. I boarded some of it with burning tools. And
Okay.
it's like with this along the border I did with and underneath here there's a border with like a spiral spring type of a bit in the burner, and then I used a knife blade on the little squares on the front here, and I may do some more of that on the back yet.
Yeah, terrific job. Hey, I just want to mention as well, he mentioned MLCS. MLCS and Penn State Industries are kind of one and the same company. And if any of you have not been up to the kind of North Philly off 611, their retail store is just amazing. And the people that work there are so they'll let you try anything. They've got lathes and routers, router tables, everything set up there. But the gold mine there, I think I've mentioned in past meetings, is their back room where their crushed box, dings, dents, and end of life products are sold at about 20% of original retail. So
I've been there.
yeah, it's a neat place.
So I have a piece of black walnut that I did. It was from a black walnut crotch piece that I did. Has some spalting in here. This design is something, this is the second one I've tried of this design. The first one, unfortunately, I kind of knew better than to finish turn it because it was a partial burl, partial the main tree trunk was through here with the burl that came down on the side of it. And it measured at 34% moisture. I kind of knew better, but I finished turning it anyway. And it's all wonky and wobbly already, of course. We all do that. But anyway, so yeah, black walnut. I have stamped the bottom, but just really nice figuring in there.
That's a beautiful piece of crotch figure.
And, yeah. And the spalting here.
That's a beautiful piece of wood.
Really nice spalting in there. And then I also have a piece of, I think this is cedar. I guess you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. The guy that I got it from said it's UYEW, but to me it looks like cedar. It smells like cedar, so I think chances are it's cedar. This is the first ever hollow form I did. It was a design I saw some guy do on YouTube, so I thought I should try it too. But I managed to, had a little branch coming out here, managed to keep that in, kind of design the piece around this branch so that I could keep that in that rim. So, there again, stamp the bottom. And I also thought I could note that both of these types of wood, and I have some other stuff too. I recently added a bandsaw to my shop. I got a Laguna 14BX and I made a circle cutting jig, so I'm able to turn nice bolt knives and not start out with all wonky pieces that are just chainsaw cut. And I have, if anybody is looking for wood, I'd be willing to sell bolt knives. So, and I have both of these types of woods, and I have a bunch of other stuff too, if anybody's interested.
Mike Junkhurst asks, what's your finish?
Both of them are, well, first of all, it's the Mahoney's walnut oil, just a light coat of that, and then the Axe abrasive paste and polishing and restoring wax.
When you're cutting wood, like a crotch piece for that screen and you want to dry it, is there any tips? Because I had a black locust come down,
Okay.
and I cut the crotch piece down the middle, separated out 2 blanks, and within a couple days, I had sealed the ends. In a couple days, they just split right down the middle. So I was wondering if you had any tips or.
I've had that too. I've had some pieces that had very little cracks in it, and I did the exact same thing. That crack had minimal cracking in, which this one actually it does have a little crack right in here. Same thing. Unfortunately, a lot of my stuff, I don't know if it works better to actually take two cuts and cut that pit out entirely instead of just cutting right through it.
That's probably what I should have done.
So
Eddie Peel says that's definitely what Eastern red cedar. How he can tell looking at a crappy video picture, I have no idea, but that's what he says anyway.
well,
You said that you stamped the back. Is that with an electric, like a branding iron type thing?
yes, it is. I think I got it from Rockler. But yeah, it's an electric one.
Sure, nice.
Thank you.
I'll get the camera switch.
Another question I had along that line, something I started doing recently, I had been using anchor seal on my bolt legs and when I cut my pieces. Recently, I started, since I got the bandsaw, I started just simply shrink wrapping.
That's what Angelo does.
Okay.
And
I was
Angelo is probably the
curious
best
if that-
turner among us, so.
I've never seen or heard of anybody do it. It was a thought I had and I thought, oh, I don't
And
lock the moisture in.
Angelo does that, and he also sometimes wraps them in foil. I think he maybe waxes them first as well, too. I mean, he puts wood away for 20 years, and it's still wet when he opens it up again,
Okay.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I guess we moved on to the challenges now. This was I guess it turns out to be an experiment. It didn't start off being an experiment, just the way it progressed. It was what can I learn from my mistakes on this? The first mistake was don't be off by 1 inch when you measure how deep you can drill. Yeah.
Duh.
I went right through the bottom of it. And this is just some PVC exterior foam that I glued in there just as a, was going to be a temporary fix, but now since I discovered other errors about it, it's going to be a permanent fix and it just won't be a display piece. The other lesson I learned was a lot of woods or waxy resin in them and on them, a lot of your tropical woods. And the wood in this is this South American wood. I'm not sure if it's Czech de Viga or Czech de Viga, but it's an orange wood, and it, unlike the other reddish tinted woods, it does not change color with exposure to the atmosphere. It stays orange. However, when you're handling it, it does have a waxy feel to it, and I knew that epoxy reacted badly to humidity or moisture in the wood. And I pre-baked the wood at about 220 degrees for about 3 hours. And a lot of this waxy stuff came to the surface. I wiped it off. I washed it with acetone. But I guess there was still some residing inside. And so, see, it was like assembling a mandarin orange. I left spacers in it for the epoxy, and then when I poured the epoxy, it just filled in with 1/8 inch wide kind of a star pattern. And the oil in the wood reacted with the epoxy, and I don't know if we can get a close enough zoom on it,
You're in pretty close now.
but
You want a tighter picture?
yeah, but the epoxy, you can see where it's nowhere near the wood. Turned out nice and it's black pigmented epoxy. Turned out nice and bubble free. But if you look at the ribs radiating out there, they're just full of pores, right adjacent to the wood. The center of the spine is pretty solid, but if you get close to the wood, it's all very fine bubbles. I guess if it was a uniform enough distribution, you could go ahead and put a like a contrasting pigmented fill component into the hole, so it would really make it pop, but they didn't have a uniform distribution, and some were just downright air bubbles, like 1/8 inch to BB sized. So anyhow, that was the big lesson. So this won't be a keeper. It's why I halted. I was scalloping out with the micromotor, and I started to sand it, and then I just figured, well, it had too much going against it for me to worry about doing a nice sanding job. So this has just been like micromotor finish and no real sanding, and then just put on a buffing wheel just to knock off the fuzzy part.
So what was the color, the pigment? Was it powder or liquid, or that you added to the epoxy?
It was liquid. It was aluminite, alumalite. They call slow, which is still, you only have like 15 minutes of working time. So it's the alumalite casting resin with alumalite liquid pigment. And like I say, it wasn't caused by any chemical error within the epoxy, because it's turned out nice. It reacted with the wood.
So did you epoxy the whole outside?
I'm sorry?
Did you put epoxy around the whole thing outside and then do the micromotor? And that's how you have the black?
I assembled it with 1/8 inch shims, like an old time slide carousel. 15-degree wedges of wood that I had run a router on the edge to produce a rounded 5/16 radius diameter round nose on the end, and they were all just assembled against the common core to get them equally spaced. And then I duct taped around the outside and poured the epoxy. Oh, and I did have I put a filler block in here, so I wasn't wasting 8 ounces of epoxy to do the core. I have hollowed it out, and it was in the hollowing out process that I realized, I shouldn't be seeing. I had it on a piece of plywood. Now, I shouldn't be seeing plywood when I'm hollowing. I should just be seeing black epoxy or orange Czechny Viga. And I start getting plywood shading, so I knew I had gone just a 1/4 inch beyond the depth. So it was quite a setback.
It's a feature now.
So that's it.
Nice piece. Okay.
Okay, this is a spade leaf maple burrow that I started with, that I had laying in my shop for some years. And when I started doing epoxy, which I don't do a lot of, I'm pretty green at it yet, but I thought this would be a good place to start, because the big green,
We see you.
the burrow has all those ridges, mountains in there. Then I just took dye. I took red, green, black, and just painted the whole thing, the outside and inside. Then I set it in a 4-inch PVC pipe and put first I put glued a tenon on the bottom. Just set it in the PVC and filled it up with epoxy. Put it in a pressure pot and left it there probably a day, overnight anyhow. Took it off and learned how to turn epoxy, which you need either a negative rake or carbide cutters to do it. But yeah, that's it.
Needs are approved epoxy can.
What's that?
What kind of speed are you turning the epoxy at?
It's not fast, like more on the slow side of it. And just kind of experiment how. First, I was using just a regular gouge. And you'll get all kinds of chips, and Barry knows about that. But you need a negative rate scraper, works real good. And
We don't have a camera on him. Barry, can you put the camera on?
Sorry,
Put the camera on him.
yeah, just
Unless he's done. Is he done?
and I use it just the hollowing tools with the little carbide cutters. In fact, now you can get those cutters in negative rate. Shear scrapers, and they work real good.
Easy wood.
Easy wood, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, you pay $16 for a cutter and use it for a year and throw it away.
I've seen folks also make homemade tools where they will, using like 1/2-inch square bar, just grind, grind like a 10-degree angle on the last 1/2 inch, and drill it and tap it for a regular carbide cutter. That off the front end, it's a negative rake.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, anything that you put that 10-degree on the other side of something, it's a negative rate.
I have two things. The first is a tip and trick. This isn't my original trick, and it's not specifically for lathe turning. It's more for woodworking. But I took this is a bullet case that holds either a 357 or 38 special bullets. But I use it to hold all my bits, all my driver bits.
Nice.
I took a foam insert from like a foam kneeler pad, and that fits in top there, and it all stays nice and secure. But then I can keep them relatively organized. And when I want to get one out, I'll just take one of the magnetic bits and put it in the end, and then pull out the bit I want. The key is to remember to put the foam back in, because the first time you forget, you end up tipping it over, and then all your bits are now scattered all over the inside of the case. But I carved out some spots in the foam for like the common nut drivers that I use, spring-loaded drill bits, and a pair of magnetic bit holders. I don't remember the YouTuber that showed that, but I thought it was a pretty good trick. So if I think of it, if I remember who it was, I'll make sure I post a link to it. So I took a clear plastic, it's like a hard plastic beer glass. It was a pint glass. And I put it in my lathe with the indexing head and cut 12 slots in it. And then proceeded to weave string around the inside. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen string art from like the 1970s. So this is the type of glass that I just actually picked up at the grocery store. It's a hard plastic. And I just put that in the indexing head and then used my tool rest to mark out 12 slices. And using my Japanese saw, cut in the 12 grooves, sanded them down a little bit, and then wove the string around. And I would sort of weave out 4, and then back 3, and then out 4, back 3, just to create a pattern. Tape that all up with packing tape and fill that in with resin and put it in my pressure pot. And then probably just end the share screen. And so that's the sphere I made. You can see how the
You mean you strung that thing up and then filled it with epoxy and then turned the sphere?
correct.
Jesus. How clever.
And
Did you
it took,
hit any strings or
oh yeah, cut through all of them.
that?
Yep, cut right through.
It's very cool.
Matt, is that a nylon string or polyester?
It's cotton. It's just a cotton, like an embroidery string almost.
Matt, did you use a pressure pot?
Yeah, so I used a pressure pot. But, I don't know if we can. Which camera am I on? I don't know if we can zoom in, you can see they're tiny, tiny air bubbles.
Looks great. Wow.
Let it focus. It'll take it a second. There you can see them.
As I can.
Wow.
I'm still in batteries.
We're looking at, well, which camera are we looking at? We're looking at this camera.
There you can see the air bubbles.
Yeah.
So probably what I should have done is put it in a vacuum pot to degas it first.
What brand epoxy?
This was a Chill Ice 2. It's their thick set epoxy. They said it cures in about, I think, 5 to 7 days. But this was, a nice shot here.
Back.
There we go.
Yeah, back him out again, Barry, so we can see his face too. Back him out again. I'm looking at him with this camera here.
I actually had this in the pressure box for 5 days.
I'm looking at him over here.
And it still hadn't fully cured. At about 3 weeks, it was still actually a little bit of soft, so I had to turn it. But I'm not thrilled with that epoxy. It's not bad. I didn't use a negative rake scraper. I just held my carbide tool at a negative rake on its own. I kind of used it like a skew.
So Matt, is that sphere coming from maybe the bottom third of the cup, or is that, oh, maybe halfway?
It was around the middle. It was a full pint glass, so there was a lot of waste at the top and bottom.
Okay.
Turn the light off for a sec.
Oh.
Barry's got
Can you
that
switch
camera.
to the tailstock camera?
Yes, I can. There it is. Back it up a bit. It's too close.
There you can see it sort of.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So as an experiment, I think the next one I want to try to do it in more of a cone shape. Because right now, if you look right down the center, you can see it. You can't see the string. It's more cylindrical. I think with a cone shape, it'll get a nice taper to it and look more like a vortex type. So it was a fun little experiment. That's it for me.
Very, very cool. Yeah, that looks good.
So this, I guess, well, I had the trouble when you said more than 50%. I have a lot of resin pieces that are a lot less than 50%, but this one I think meets your challenge. And it's epoxy resin with a combination of solid particulate dyes, or I guess you call those tins, as well as liquid ones that give you some background color, and on a piece of spalted maple and hollowed out, actually. I do these by either making a square or round mold, and I usually glue on a piece of scrap into the center so you don't have to waste the epoxy for the center piece that you're doing there. And then the fun, or I'd say the lack of fun, is trying to hollow a combination piece out like this. But like this one came out pretty nicely.
Yes.
That's for sure. You got more pictures?
No, that's the one. I got the actual piece.
Good for you. Okay, hold the piece up. No, now we know how big it is. You see, we didn't know before.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Nice.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
What kind of resin are you using, Bruce?
You know, I don't remember which one this is. It's a deep pour epoxy. It was interesting hearing Matt's comments. This one probably takes 3-4 days. I think it's called, this was, I think, super clear deep pour epoxy. I've used a couple of them. There's a Canadian version that I used as well. And one of the things that people do wrong or make a mistake about is translating between mixing ratios in weight and volume. And if you can't just immediately have a 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 and change that to weight, because the two components probably don't weigh the same thing. So you have to make sure that you're using the correct ratios, whether it's by weight or volume. And if they specify one and you want the other, you need to send the manufacturer a note and make sure you get the conversion to use weight or volume if that's what you want to do. But Also, I find in these deep pour resins, you really don't need a pressure pot. They take so long to cure that you could leave them out and you really get no bubbles.
If you've tried different resins, have you noticed after they cure that some are turn better than others? Some might be more brittle, or is it all pretty much the same?
I think you can definitely get epoxies that have different hardnesses and they will turn in different ways. And there seems to be a very fine line between when you chip it out and when you actually turn it. And I can't say I enjoy turning epoxy. You know, you're not going to get those long shavings without making a huge mess. And I do use carbide tools for them, but I still find it's a challenge because when I really want to get it to piece and get it fast, I'm going to chip it.
That's a spinning wheel. That's the back of the spinning wheel. And there's not much that I turned on. I mean, I made it. It has some component parts from New Zealand, but the hard part for me was making the drive wheel because I had to work both sides. So I started with a face plate and drilled the holes all the way through. But whenever you take a wheel off and put it back on, you never get it quite exactly right. At least I don't. So that took some doing, and I know how to do it now using a 10mm bar running through the holes, the ends of the lathe. It's got bearings, and it turns very, very smoothly. It's made of cherry that was given to me, and it's modeled after Magic Craft Susie, which is a New Zealand wheel. Okay, that's the front. It's a double treadle. This is where you store the extra bobbins, and that's a big hosta plant. So I guess that's what I wanted to show you. It's the same design, front and rear. There are three grooves here, and then many grooves on the whorls above for various speeds. I'm a wannabe spinner. My daughter is a very good spinner, and this spins very nicely.
Very
So
cute.
that's what I wanted to show you.
Good stuff.
Who was the manufacturer? You said there were components from a New Zealand manufacturer?
Yes, Magic Craft,
Magic Craft.
MAGACRAFT. They make really nice, really expensive spinning wheels.
We have
You said
about
that was a large hosta plant, but about how high was that? How many inches high is that?
Oh, how many inches high is it? Well, it's about 2.5 feet or something like that.
Okay.
And it's a big bank of it. It looked, like a week and a half ago, it was these little stubby things about this big.
We mean, how big's the spinning wheel? Not how big's the hostas.
Oh.
There's all different sizes of hostas, so I don't know how big.
Yeah,
the
well, that's my
spinning wheel
biggest
was.
one. I'm proud of it. How big is a spinning wheel? It's about 36 inches tall, but you can set it for any height you want. That knob in the middle that you may have seen loosens, and then you can push the upright to the left or right for left-handed spinners and right-handed spinners and short spinners and low chairs and so on. So sorry about the misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's fine. But so this is a fully functional piece of equipment then. This isn't just a
Oh
model.
yes. Oh yes.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's the
Thank you.
real that's the real thing.
The circle, how did you glue that up that you turned?
Oh,
It's like
okay.
4 sections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you lap
It's
it or
just
how did you?
it's just 4 triangular pieces of wood. I started with a cherry board, then I milled down to a little over 7 inches, and then cut triangles and arranged them into a square and used biscuit joiners to help me line them up and glue them up.
Oh, so you created a big flat board. You didn't.
I created a big flat board.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's heavy too. And you want heavy for so it just keeps turning for momentum.
Momentum.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you,
Take the
Jay.
office.
I have, what is it? This has if there are no threads on this end, it is hexagonal. It has threads on this end and it has a taper inside here. Okay. This is normally used with either a drill press or a milling machine. Can anybody guess what it is?
I know exactly what it is, but does anybody say a collet holder? For-
Yes.
By an ER32.
This takes a standard ER32 collet, place it in the nut, then you assemble this, and you clamp your workpiece in the collet. You put it in a vise mounted this way, so the flats are down. You can cut flutes, and this is 6-sided, although I have 4-sided ones, and I have seen a triangular one as well, but I don't have one of those. And the idea is you put it in here, you can drill a flute, or you can make a hexagonal shape on the end of something. You flip it one side, you do it again, you flip it, and it's just a way to make even flutes on a workpiece.
Nice tip.
You can also get those in Morse taper, number 2 Morse taper. So you can use it in your lathe.
Well, you could use it with your index and in your lathe, yeah.
Mhm.
But I don't think these,
You can
I don't
use it in
think,
your collet shop.
I don't know, I've ever seen that one.
Mhm.
Normally, these are clamped in a vise. And
Okay.
then you have either a milling machine or a drill press that comes down and then you can use a table or move them back and forth and make route or make flutes in it.
I'll bring mine to show for next time.
Okay, that's good. I like to see it.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay.